All right, welcome to live stream 35 of my live stream. I'm Joshua Kemble. I need to work out a better intro than live stream of my live stream at some point. But anyhow, this is the live stream where I work on my second graphic novel, second published graphic novel. The first book is two stories. Book one, which you can see by like zooming in a lot there. It says book one. So book two, I'm hoping to kind of complete. It'll be about the same length. This is 122-ish page, 124. I can't really remember the exact page count. I think it's 124. That's hand lettered, hand inked. Basically a story about it's a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. And before I kind of get going on my art and get working on it, I'll explain what I'm working on. So that was book one. Book two, I am working on the thumbnails and the rough pencils for the second issue. So these don't look like the finals will look. They're sort of an approximation to help me figure out layout, but I'm going a little further in detail, so there will be less work, hopefully, in my ideal world when it comes to finalizing the pages. So phase one of it is getting through the entire script, working out the thumbnails and the roughs. And then phase two will be taking these, working out the grid layouts, like the panel borders and typography and other certain technical things like that, and then do that for the entire book, and then get into research, photo reference, and then, so that's three, and then the fourth will be penciling all of the pages with final pencils, and then the fifth will be inking all the lettering and pencils and all of that by hand. So that's pretty much, we're at phase one, but we're getting close to the end of phase one, which I'm really excited about. So that puts me about on track to where I'd like to be. This coffee's good. Okay, so it is late at night. It's like midnight, and this is when I was able to start working today. So I'm also doing the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge, which is the challenge where you do 30 minutes a day minimum working on your own personal comic project, and I'm putting in probably about like 3 to 4 hours. But let's see what day it is. So it's the 7th, 28, 31. So that's 59. So 65. I'm on day 65 of the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge. And in reality, I'm probably going to be doing that for about every day for the year. But anyhow, it was a challenge started by my friend Kevin Cross, who was trying to find time to work on personal comic books on top of working on professional work, because it gets really hard to make time when you're working, like 9 to 5 or whatever on freelance or client work or whatever your thing you have to do for a living is, to make your own personal comics. So he came up with that challenge as like a self-challenge, as a way to kind of execute comics. So anyhow, that's all out of the way. Now let's explain what we're working on. So this is page 107 that I'm going to be working on. What you're seeing in front of you is page 106, which is the previous page. And then we'll just kind of go from there. So I am excited. I noticed today that I only have like, let's see here. So there's one. That's not even a full page. 2, 3, 4, and this will be 5 pages left of this entire script. The rest are all worked out and thumbnailed, so I'm getting closer, and I'm about, maybe a fourth of the way through mapping out from the script and translating it to comics. So that's cool. 5 pages is not bad. That puts me on track, I think, because it's usually about 4 to 5 pages per script page. So I think the page count's going to work out. And more than that, I'm also being reassured that by kind of constantly showing up and working on these beasts, comics that eventually get done. So, all right, let's get into it. It's 5 minutes on the intro there. So, all right. So if you're joining me too, and you want to hang out on these streams or ask any questions, feel free to ask or talk to me in the chats. And then similarly, feel free to come hang out and draw. We have a little night gang that usually kind of shows up on these streams pretty late into the night, and it's been pretty fun. So, all right, welcome. So anyhow, let's get into this a little further. What else? There was something else. All right. I think we're good. All right. So here we go. Let's get into it. Sorry, I was reviewing a few things on Facebook and stuff. The other things, so the thing I'd like to do tonight is work on this, and then possibly after I finish my stream, start playing with some potentially different styles for a comic pitch that my sister wrote and I am illustrating. That is a really cool story, but I feel like the art could be better. And so I kind of want to take a second crack at it before we do another round of submissions to publishers. All right, so here we go. The better things were looking. Okay. So that last page, initially yesterday, I was thinking it was going to be setting up a shot, or the last panel there, it was going to be setting up a shot that would then, we'd zoom out. But I'm actually thinking of using another technique to kind of express what I'm trying to say on the next page, but it will still continue from that kind of floating head panel, which is pretty exciting. All right. Let me see. Other than that, it's been an interesting day, just full of a lot of I'm also going to get rid of some of these extra panels because I usually have extra panels lingering from previous pages just in case I need to reference them. But I think at this point I need to kind of clean it up. All right. So let's get into it and see what we got here. All right. So for panel, I'm working with a basic 9-panel grid and then deviate from there as need be. Okay. And actually this one I think need will be. But it's getting into a sequence also in this story where some really heavy subject matter has happened in the first section of the book, where it gets into being a victim of violent crime, some pretty graphic violence, and then some strange happenings with a neighbor and being sort of held hostage and stuff like that. And then from there, we've had the characters like we've sort of established a backdrop as to why there was like a sort of heavy mental breakdown, which is written about in the first book. So now we're kind of digressing back to the events of the first book, where we're back at an apartment in Portland where our character, who's me, it's an autobio thing, is sort of reflecting and thinking about their current situation, and sort of describing where they're at. So most of the comic thus far has been like this beat for beat, shot in real time, with mostly what you're seeing is the story happen right in front of you. So it's like taking place in the locations that are being discussed and stuff like that. So it's very like cinematic in that sense, where it's like, you have like shot changes and stuff like that, but you have pretty much similar environments. And this chapter is interesting because it starts getting more into this like infographic, iconographic way of storytelling, which is sort of reflecting the first part of the first book. And so you're going to see a lot of that with the comp for this page. All right, so here we go. The better things were looking. All right. I didn't mention, I was supposed to mention this. I kind of forgot to mention it. But I am kind of excited. I've also been doing the voice for a character for Jim Lujan. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be the final choice for it because I'm not like really a voice actor. But the plot is really funny. So I'll show a little sneak peek before I kind of before I get into drawing. I want to show a very sneak peek. My buddy Jim approved it. Image from the character I'm going to be voicing, which is like a rad pastor for like one of those mega churches that like celebrities go to. Oh goodness, did my okay? So my hold on a sec. So my Photoshop just died. So you guys might be seeing sort of like a really strange thing. Oh, cool. Okay. It died right on time. So there you go. There's a little sneak picture of the pastor who I'm going to be playing, I guess, at least temporarily until that changes. And I'm pretty happy about it. I think it's a really funny story. So anyhow, so that shows you that. Let me see if I can. Oh, his name's Pastor Kyle, and so he's gonna be like a pastor who's like, all right, yeah, Jesus, yeah. But it's also gonna be riffing on things that probably should be made fun of within the church, because even though I'm a Christian, it's like there's definitely some stuff that's rife for making fun of within, especially like mega churches and celebrity churches and stuff like that. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be funny. But once again, I'm a little self-conscious about the voice acting that I do in it because I'm not really a voice actor. So anyhow, I am still really excited about that though, and I think it'll be funny. So the sequence that we're doing, it's like kind of an intro to like the church service, and it's just riffing and making fun of. But I think with not harmfully making fun of. I think anybody who's familiar with Jim's work, you'll know he kind of just he'll make fun of anyone, and he doesn't like to punch down. So I like that, and I think it'll be fun to be a part of. All right, let's do this again since Photoshop wigged out, and yeah. So my hope is to get this done tonight, and then possibly like rework some of those pages, or at least come up with a different style or look for a different project, which I don't know if I can live stream. I probably won't be able to. that part. And then I'd also tomorrow I need to take extensive book notes for our indie review show that'll be airing on Monday at 9 p.m. Pacific, which is cool because we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite cartoonists, Winsor McCay, and talking about his work Little Nemo in Slumberland. But I'm starting with probably the most problematic and challenging book to discuss because it's full of a lot of imagery that does not age well. Like it's very racist imagery, and yet the cartooning is so beautiful, and yet like it's so wrong, like, and of its time, because it's, which is not to excuse it, but it's like 1907 is when these things were created. So people's outlooks, and especially McKay probably was likely a very racist person, as was a giant percentage of the country. And so it'll be an interesting one to navigate and to discuss on the Indie Review Show, because while the work is beautiful and just incredible, and like the use of line and perspective and like sort of invention of the whole medium we use is really exciting, it's also going to be a really interesting thing to kind of grapple with the ramifications of that. Good morning. Crimson Owl Comics is joining us. That's Ronnie Gunter. He has a YouTube show where he talks about horror comics and analyzes them, and is also working on a horror comic of his own, and possibly heading to work. How you doing, Ronnie? How's everything going? Yeah, he's shown a few sneak peeks during these streams of the comic he's working on. It's very exciting. I kind of like it. It's got like a neat texture to it too. That sort of makes like a flat color look a little more like painterly, and almost like in a weird way a little bit like a cut paper type look, but it's really cool. Good and going great. That's awesome. All right, so let's get back to this text. So it's supposed to say, the better things we're looking, though. And I'll definitely possibly like talk about some stuff that's on my mind and stuff. But usually when I'm writing, it's hard to write and talk. So let me write this stuff first. How's the comic coming, Ronnie? I hope it's coming along good. I hope you're making progress. Things were looking nice. And I think he was saying he wanted the flashback scenes to look aged in a way, and I definitely think he pulled that off. And then it's coming along great. Yeah, those it's cool. It's Victorian era stuff, which is pretty exciting. I think the comic sort of flashes back and forth from like the present to the Victorian era, and so it's going to be really fascinating to kind of to read it, see where it's going to go. Let's see here. Some of that script that I'm possibly going to be trying to like improve the art for the pitch on after I finish this thumbnail. It takes place in the Victorian age, and it's an interesting challenge to like try to kind of get those costumes and stuff like that. So I think you're pulling it off very well. Okay. The better things we're looking, the more isolated and helpless. Okay. So originally I was going to have this. So this is our last panel from our last page. And I was going to have like a zoomed out shot on white to make a character look really isolated and helpless. But I thought better of it because I like this trick. And I actually think it's a visually disjointed and interesting thing to do, where I don't know. I think it'll hopefully convey what I'm talking about in the script a little more. Something like that. Might even I still find it fascinating what happens visually when you kind of double something, and it makes it look kind of blurry. I don't know. There's something about that I think is effective. But I also feel like that usually like gets a disjointed kind of like a very effective, like disjointed, anxiety ridden kind of vibe. And it'll look cool on the final too. And honestly, what are comics if they do not look cool? You want to have your final art visually be appealing and interesting to kind of tackle. So, okay, to me that's interesting, and hopefully it will work very well. Okay. I'm almost through my coffee. I might have to grab a refill quicker than usual. Anybody familiar with these casts knows usually it's like on the hour exact that I like refill my coffee. But today I'm a little more did a little bit of crazy weeding in our backyard, and we're almost done with like the entire yard. It's an insane yard, and we live in a desert area, so it's been I like this. Corey was saying, I believe comics that don't look cool are called YA comics. I kid. Yeah, that better be kidding, Corey. There's brilliant YA comics. I'm just kidding. Yes, of course. That is completely true, Corey, and I agree with you, and I don't think you're kidding. And I will quote you on that when we review Bone on the IRS show. How are you doing, Corey? What are you working on? How's your animation coming along? Okay, so let's see here. I hope it's coming along well. So Corey was on our stream yesterday, and we were streaming way into the early hours. And then my friend Chris Cawagua came by. So it was kind of neat. It was like a little art hangout that went probably way too late. Which these things tend to go. I always struggle with kind of, which by the way, Corey, if you want to hop on, you are free to. If you don't, no worries too. But yeah, I always struggle with like the juggling act of being a night owl and by nature being at my most creative at like the early hours of the morning. Ooh, I like that. Pitch his client on the idea of animation mixed with live action people and puppets. Dude, Corey, if you rock like a Muppet style animation, I'm sorry, I'm just really curious. what that's going to look like in finale. But to me, when I hear puppets, I like picture like straight up Muppets, and that makes me really excited because I am a huge fan of corny puppets. Like I actually think puppets are great. But maybe you mean like puppets, like puppet rigs for animation. Frank Salazar Art Nation is also joining us. I'm thinking about like doing this during the streams, that when I kind of mention people in the chats that are artists, that I'm going to be like, Frank Salazar of Tarako Creative Cast is joining us. Hey Frank, how you doing? Like one of those kind of AM radio announcers. I don't know, Frank, what do you think? Or should I just kind of stick with the regular format? I think it might be funny. Where it's like, and when Frank is talking about comics, he's talking about the Tarako Creative Cast that you can find at Frank Salazar and Tarako Creative on YouTube. I don't know. My point is, I should have been like an AM radio host and not a cartoonist. Oh, you like? Okay, so Frank likes it. There we go. And then he said, Corey was saying like a post-apocalyptic puppet Muppet driving a Mad Max vehicle stage with an animated band. That would be, oh man, that makes me really, really excited, Corey. And what's funny is, if you heard another artist like kind of tell you like, I want to do a post-apocalyptic puppet Muppet driving a Mad Max vehicle stage with an animated band, if it weren't Corey saying that, I would be like, you're crazy. But it's like Corey can actually make that happen, which is kind of awesome. And so that makes me really excited because I think that would be a very cool thing. But yeah, anyhow, so that's Corey Kerr of CoreyKerr.com. You can also find him at the Indie Review Show. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying the AM radio voice thing. It might work. It might not. Okay. So here we go. Let's get into panel 2. And I'm going to type it out because I do have this tendency to get like lost in conversation and then I slow down my productivity. So when I'm writing stuff, I have to focus on the writing, and then I will get back in the zone. How are you doing, Frank? How is everything coming along? How is your most current project? Have you made a new Captain Goggles icon? You showed us like one you did of Anna yesterday, and I'm curious, like, have you updated your icon? Or is it going to be like hers updated and then yours not updated? I'm curious. And then Corey has not turned this stuff over to the client yet. Night Watch. Welcome to Night Watch with the Night Gang. Night Gang in the house, y'all. And actually, it's funny. So that voice I'm doing, I don't know if you guys heard at the top, but like, actually here, let me save. And re-show it. So Jim Lujan is going to make a cartoon. He's working on a cartoon that is sort of going to be joking about contemporary churches with like celebrities. And let me see if I can do this without crashing my Photoshop. Last time I did this, it kind of froze the Photoshop. But let me see. So I'll just show you guys. He has told me that I can show a little sneak peek of the character that I will be voicing, which is a cool pastor who would say things like, "That's totally rad, dude." But terrible, like corny. And then I think the church is called Larkhaven, which I think is very funny. So anyhow, that's going to be funny. I still don't know if I'll end up in the final cut because I'm not a voice actor, but that's pretty fun. Jim Lujan, who also collaborated with Corey Kerr on on a cartoon recently. Mama Soto is also joining. How's it going? Welcome back to the Night Gang. Yeah, we're all here. It's pretty awesome. What are you working on? How's it going, Mama Soto? Night Watch with the Night Gang. All right. And then Corey said, I'm doing that whether the client goes for it or not because now I have to. That's awesome. That's a really good call. Yeah. And actually, if you're really passionate about something, this is why one of the reasons I want to redo the pitch pages that I talked about a little bit in the last stream is I don't want to bother pitching something I'm not proud of or into. And so it's like I feel like I need to rework my art on those pitch pages, which you guys haven't seen, but needless to say, like re-looking at them, I'm like, I could do better. So I'm planning on doing better because otherwise there's no purpose in putting it out there. Okay, Frank says, I made a Captain Goggles sketch. I haven't updated my icon yet, but I will. I did a masked woman in a Japanese art style. I'm doing one for Captain Goggles too. And then Mama Soto said working on a business card. Yay. Ooh, fun. Not really. I don't know. Business cards can be fun. Actually, weirdly enough, like that right there is what my business card looks like, but a little bit larger. And I print them on a square, and then they'll have like my stuff. So I have fun with business cards, but it depends on the client because sometimes it can be one of the most dull things on the planet if the client's closed off to like different possibilities. Okay, so the better things were okay, more helpless I felt. So now I got to do, I became, and this one I think needs to reference the old first page as well. Okay, well, let me get the type down first. Frank was saying he likes Scott's business card. Yeah, which one? Because I know he has a couple, and I do like his there's one where he has like his Circworks ad, like the vintage ad branding, and I love that. Both are cool. One has just his regular branding, but I like the vintage ad one. There might be other ones I'm not aware of too, but I definitely think that vintage comic book ad look is one of my favorite things in the world. Yeah, see, Frank, like I figured that's the one you were referencing because that's like my favorite one. And I figured, you seem like a guy of taste. All right, so here we go. I became more. I'm actually really excited about how far this is coming. It's like been a slog to just continually work on these almost every night. But it's like I'm finally seeing some progress. Like I kind of showed it at the top where I counted through the beginning of the show, where I counted through what I have left, but I only have 5 script pages left. And I don't know. I think that's pretty awesome. Like it's gonna get done sooner than later. So like 2 months from now, when I'm still working on this, I'll be like, I'm making progress. But I think that's one of the tricks of comics is you just kind of keep plowing forward, and eventually you actually look back and you're like, oh, I got a lot done. Okay. Oh, I forgot to mention, and I think almost everybody in the chat's already owns it, but yeah. So 2 Stories is on sale on Amazon. I don't know why it's at $14.19, and the usual price is $19.99. So if you haven't picked up my graphic novel about faith and mental illness, or want to get one for a friend or something like that, it's a 122-page book. and for like $14.19. So if you have like Amazon Prime, that's pretty cool because like with shipping and all that fun stuff, Amazon Prime, it's free shipping, so it'd be like a $14 graphic novel, which is a pretty good deal. Anyhow, I don't know why that is, and I don't know how many days that'll last, but while it does, I figure have people take advantage of it. So if you haven't picked it up, it's a good time to check it out. All right. That being said, let's get back to the regular stream. So, sorry about that quick drop. I just realized I didn't mention it at the beginning of this. Okay, so convinced, and this I think might call back to like the previous pages. So how is the business card fun to work on, Mama Soto? I'm kind of curious. Like, is it a fun client? Is it a card for a client or for yourself? Because I think doing your own branding can be a lot of fun, but doing client branding can be a beast. Okay. So very heavy topics in this book, but working on the thumbnails for it. So have a good night, Corey. Thanks for stopping by. All right, so let's see here. Mama Soto said it's a client medical, so not fun, but I'm going to jazz it up. And then Ronnie was saying, like, Corey. I think he might have meant to say bye, Corey. But it kind of came across like, no, Corey, don't go. And then adios, Corey, Frank as well. So, yeah, so here we go. Or answer to life's meaning. So this section, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. I might even need to do the type over again because I might want a wide shot. And I kind of need to look at the first comic to kind of see where that's at. Okay, so I am thinking maybe not. This one might be a relatively new shot, although it's not going to be entirely new because it's in the same exact location. No, I kind of like this overhead thing. Let's do that. Maybe I will pull a reference from the overhead. Okay. I've looked through this. Oh, dude, Frank doing deep cut references saying, please don't go. Don't go. And then, anyhow, yeah. Any great recommendations for where any of you get Procreate brushes for those that use it? I do not use Procreate. So anyone in the chats, Ronnie, Frank, I don't know if either of you use Procreate. And if you do, where can you get good brushes? Let's see here. All right. So I'm going to have, this is going to be a wide one. Are you starting to use Procreate, Mama Soto, or is it something you've used and are enjoying? Frank said, I don't use brushes to Procreate, which is a pretty good joke. That is pretty hilarious. I will put that up there. That's very funny. That's a good. That's kind of a rife, actually. Like who named the program Procreate? Actually, that's pretty. That is pretty rife for like riffing and making jokes about. You know, like I'm actually kind of surprised, but honestly, I hadn't really even seen the connection there with the name. But I'm like, that is a really bad program name. I mean, it's awesome for like it's a professional creation tool, but yeah, I mean, that is pretty hilarious. I never even put two and two together with that. I frankly think, um, ooh, that could almost sound punny because I'm talking about Frank, but I think Frank should write uh, humor strips. Like, I actually think he is a very hilarious dude and should write some comedy stuff. That's actually something I would like to do at some point too. Not that I don't even really view myself as like super funny, but it'd be fun to play in the toolbox of like comedic stuff. I do have a little bit of comedy relief in the book, but it'd be fun to do. I don't know. One of these days, I might do like a superhero comic or a fantasy comic that is um, very goofy. Be interesting to follow up this very serious one with something very lighthearted and silly. Okay. So here we have, it's going to be a similar shot. It's like bad music jokes. My kids, all string players, say these things like I broke my G string. Yeah, totally. That's cool that you have kids that play music. String players makes it sound a little bit like you're talking about violin or like stand-up bass or something like that. Have a good one, Ronnie. I'm imagining you're starting your work day or something. So have a good day at work, and thanks for hanging out. And send us sneak peeks of your comic in the future as you're working on it and getting it done. Yeah, there we go. Violin, cello, and viola. That is awesome. Yeah, because it was like technically guitar is a stringed instrument, but I don't call a guitar a stringed instrument. Frank is singing the Please Don't Go song a lot. Yes. Goodbye, Ronnie. Um, so okay. So I do think like I like that angle of kind of showing the sitting, but this one will be a little bit different. But not by a ton, you know. I just want it to be enough to kind of reflect to someone who has patiently been following this series that there are these little connections um, going on. Cello is something I really started digging, being like the, you know, emo punk rock kid I am, like when um, Cursive started using cello in their music, I was like, okay, I really dig cello. Like I like classical music too, but something about like their album, like they had this album called Burst in Bloom. It was an EP where they used, and then I think one called Domestica, and then another one called The Ugly Organ, which is like one of their most known albums, but it's like hardcore with cello, which I think is really cool. So, okay. I'm mainly going to just hold that here just as a reference. So I'm taking a similar shot. And then what I will probably do, I'm going to obviously get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that because that was enough reference, I think. And then we're going to do a brand new take on it. Let's see. That's good. But yeah, so that made me really like cello a lot. Like it's just a really cool, like deep instrument that has a really neat vibe. But yeah, the amount of jokes about strings, you know, yeah, especially in the guitar world, like there's quite a lot of ones. Oh, nice. Middle is on cello, and he's a rock guy too. Loves prog rock, math rock, and Fall of Troy, etc. Yeah, math rock is amazing, but I can't do it for too long. My favorite kind of mathy band is a Dillinger Escape Plan, and they're really pretty awesome, or were really awesome, and but it's like I can never really like do a full album of theirs. Like I can put on like one or two songs, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta get to like a little less mathy of stuff because I just can't handle it. Yeah, that's a good call. But it is cool. I mean, it's fun to hear. And then Prague, I don't know. I'm mixed on Prague. I like some of it, and then some of it drives me nuts. Do you use a screen tablet? I've been wanting to upgrade to something more my price range and reached out to people drawing tablet. Huh. That's a good idea to try to get one in exchange for a review. I do not. I mean, that's why like when you see this, it's like I'm not looking here because I got used to just a regular Cintiq. So I can show you the Cintiq I use. It's literally just an old school, nothing special, no screen. Yeah, I like that personally. Far too much shredding and screaming for me. I don't mind the screaming. There's some bands that I like that scream a lot, but yeah, I think it's more just the shredding and the sort of like a really deep math rock band will have like a pattern, but it's almost unintelligible. They play in like more complex patterns and rhythms than like a your average kind of 4/4 16th note, and so that can be really tedious after a while, even though it's like proficient and cool. I don't know. I always feel like one of the things I love in music is when stuff is proficient, but not like super proficient. Like I feel like there's an area in music where like you can have like a killer guitarist, like a guitarist who just shreds, like they're amazing. They're like a wizard on it. And yet like the music's just terrible. Because it's like too polished and kind of produced and not that math rock goes there, but it's like there is like a weird there's a good shredding and then there's like a shredding that for me just drives me nuts where it's just like show offy and doesn't serve the song. And I guess actually that kind of applies to like what I think in comics too, where it's like I'd rather see a comic that's really well written, that's poorly drawn, than a comic that's like beautifully drawn and terribly written. Um, and I mean, ideally, I want to see the marriage of both, but there is a certain level where sometimes if like art's too polished, it kind of turns me off. Like it's not. Um, I don't tend to like only like super polished art. Is my point, I guess. Yeah, I think. I do think Frank though. Like it depends. Like screen tablets are good. Like if I were doing I do have one at work that's like a screen tablet. It's a Wacom, like um, forgetting what it's called, but this one's just the Intuos. So I think it's just the Cintiq. So the screen tablet I think is a Cintiq or whatever, but I have it at work at my job, and I barely ever use it with the tablet on. Um, but I'd basically always recommend getting. I've tried like the off-brand ones. Maybe they've gotten better, but I would recommend getting something by Wacom personally, because although I've heard with like the Apple Pencil um, that tablets can be pretty effective. I don't know, Mama Soto, do you use a screen tablet or just a regular like Intuos or like a Cintiq? What do you use? Um, yeah, I'm pretty basic with my like setup, but part of why like at home I think if I were to start doing more digital inking and like even this doing the thumbnails and the roughs, like on the last book, I didn't do those digitally. I just did them in a sketchbook, like um, you know, with whatever I had lying around. um, I just thought it would be helpful to do these digitally um, for this. But anyhow, so because I don't do a lot of my inking digitally for my personal work, I don't really see a need. I think if I were to be doing a lot of digital inking, I would possibly look into investing in it. But I would also say, like, I have one at work and I keep it on the tablet mode rather than the screen mode because I just don't. I've gotten so used to when I'm working digitally having like my eyes here and my pen tablet here, which took forever to get used to, but I'm so used to it now that it's kind of weird to try to adjust back and and also I find it's still a little laggy and those delays are kind of weird. It's not quite as organic as I don't know, a cheap ag tech screen tablet that works well, but for screen drawing, she uses her iPad and Apple Pencil, which is really nice. That's kind of why I use it more. Yeah, I have heard that is something I have not delved into yet, and I probably might need to. I remember when the iPad Pro came out. It's like weird. Like I was at a NCS meeting, and like a bunch of these people were like always working traditionally, and then the iPad Pro came out, and like almost every guy in that room, and these are like pretty heavy hitting cartoonists, like all switched to the iPad Pro like within a week. It was nuts. Um, but yeah, I've heard the way it handles and responds is really good, um, and like much more organic and much more like traditional, which is pretty cool. And then she said, pretty impressed with it. Flows really nice. That's awesome. So there you go, Frank. And then it seems like the Ag Tech screen tablet seems to be working well too. So there's some ideas. Um, XP Pen Deco. Yeah, I should probably look into other brands because I have always hoped for something that would come out and like crush Wacom, like, because it's just really expensive. But I do find that their tablets are like the least buggy and the easiest to use. However, I will say their drivers have been kind of weird with the new. They have been having a lot of like driver issues that they didn't used to have, and I think that has more to do with Mac than it does with tablets. But yeah, all right. You know what's cool? I was gonna go get my refill of coffee early, and it turns out, nope. Like clockwork, it's about an hour in, and we're 1/3 of the way through the page. So I'm gonna take my like 10-second break, and well, not 10. It's usually about 20 seconds. So in the meantime, yeah, share like what you think about tablets and stuff like that. That's interesting about the iPad Pro, though, Frank. Yeah, I haven't bought an iPad Pro yet either, so Big Sur is not helping. Regretting updating. Me too. I've been regretting updating since Catalina. I mean, like it's just been so bad. I don't know why their OS has been having so many issues in the past few years. I feel like Adobe too, the subscription model, and then the new OSs. It's like one of them's bugging out all the time. If it's not the one, it's the other. Okay, so I'm gonna take my like really quick coffee refill break, and then we'll get back into it. Let's see. I'm getting a little further on this page. Hopefully, fairly soon, I'll only have like 4 left of the entire book. Sort of weird to believe. All right. Whew. And not 4 of these pages, but 4 of these guys, which are usually about 4 pages each. So, okay, I'll be right back. All right. Let's see here. Reading Frank's post in the Artcasters. Nice. Okay. I am curious what happened to Jeff Lafferty. I love the Artcast a lot, and I mean Jeff used to be on Artcasters with us, and then like him and Gibran, like I love what they do. It's so fun. It's kind of a bummer, like see them kind of disappear off of streaming for a while. So I'm hoping they come back, but I'm sure it's like life stuff. Probably things got in the way, but Jeff's a good dude. So I was just reading that in the Earthcasters Facebook group where it was just there was a question of like what happened to Jeff, and I'm like I'm curious too. Should send the guy a message, make sure everything's okay. But hopefully hopefully we get some streams back because he's super fun to watch. Really talented painter too. All right, so hang on, one more second for my break, and then we'll come back. Okay. All right. Both use pen tablets, prefer screen tablets, but I've been using a pen tablet and it works just fine. It must be preference. Most artists I know prefer screen. And then you can see like my buddy Chris Caligula, he's using like a iPad Pro, I think, for a lot of his art, which makes sense because it's really responsive and cool. I think I just like tend to be kind of fine with what I got. Let's see. So I do have a question for Mama Soto. Like, I think this is possible, but can you use your iPad Pro as like a tablet connected to your computer? I'm kind of curious about that. Like, in theory, could you use it like a Wacom? That might be kind of worth it. I also probably at some point should invest in a second monitor because I have two monitors at work. And it is really helpful, even in the case of like a stream like this, where you could have the stream running on one screen, have your main screen for like for art and stuff. But yeah. Yeah, Frank was saying they disappeared, but it's just life, and Jib didn't have power for a couple days. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully everybody's hanging in there. Yeah, they're good dudes. All right, so let's get into this. I continued researching more methods. Okay. Okay. This is going to require pulling again from the previous book. So there's the first page, just to reference in a second. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, I might use this as like a little template for the panels over top. And I'm gonna just make a little panel border and we'll move from there. Okay. No, that's not it. Ooh. I kind of actually think, okay, possibly that. So I'm thinking about things I could pull. I might want to use something similar to that. I might want to use something similar to from the first page. Definitely not going to pull the search bar back. Okay. I actually like the idea of using this little grid. Okay. So I'm going to do something equivalent to that where it's basically those panels. Let's see. Okay. This is going to be interesting to try to work out, but it shouldn't be too bad. So let's see how I can break it up and kind of use a similar thing. You guys ever print your art at HM? And if so, what did you figure for calibration? I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean by HM? Let me know what you mean by HM. Um, and then am I working on a new layout? Yeah, so what I'm doing at home. Um, I mean, so for my home printer, I just have like a cheap like HP all-in-one that's like a large format. So it has like a large format scanner that can do 13 by 19. Um, but I don't tend to do like prints that I'm gonna sell from home because I find like using offset printers or like web press that is out of the house like just to have a better quality. So it depends. But for comps and stuff, I do have a printer at home. And uh, calibration is a nightmare, and I don't really mess with that here. At my work, we have our printers like professionally calibrated, and then there's usually like this little attachment you can put on it that retains the calibration, so you're matching. Especially because there we work a lot with Pantones, and so it's like Pantones to CMYK. Um, is a really hard transition for a CMYK printer to kind of try to do Pantone. And so, but yeah, it's an inkjet, what I have. You were saying you have a laser, not printing for sale, just getting past the color nightmare. Yeah, I think if you want more color accuracy, personally, like this is my own opinion, I would not use a laser printer because laser printers just don't have the color accuracy that at least I've found. Like I think an inkjet is going to get a lot closer to actual color accuracy for like a home printer. And then I'm not working on a new layout. You were asking about that. Well, it is kind of a new layout. This is the rough pencils for page 107 of Two Stories Book 2. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm trying to comp out is like getting through the second volume of this book, and hopefully like once I have that, that'll work. But yeah, I to me, laser printers are great for cost and for efficiency because it's like you are only going to have to use like the refills like once, but unless you're using like a very large like commercial laser printer, inkjet's probably your best bet. And then laser printers are really great if you're like printing off like zines or something like that, and like color accuracy is not as important, but also laser great for like durability, right? Because those pages just don't like blur to the extent that like an inkjet does if you like accidentally like drop coffee on it or something. Um, but yeah, the only thing that stinks about inkjets is just like the uh, ink cartridges are super expensive. I do have some friends who will like use like ink cartridge refill rigs to refill so they don't have to buy like the overly priced brand cartridges. And so that by doing that, they kind of override the loss leader thing that printers do, where they sell the printer at a loss and then they gouge you with the cost of the ink cartridges. But the problem is, if you do that, like your color accuracy problem comes right back. So I don't know. I tend to just go with, like I use HP cartridges in my HP, all-in-one printer thing. So that's my long-winded answer to your question. I hope I answered that okay, Mama Soto. Let's see. What about you, Frank? What do you use? Do you have a printer that you use at home? I definitely think it's important for people to have a scanner at home. That's definitely huge, in a large format. And usually the best prices you can get for a large format scanner, especially if you're doing cartooning, um, are like those all-in-ones. And then Frank was saying he has a Canon Proxima and goes through ink like crazy and can't always find them. Yeah. So that's the beast that we all have to deal with. Okay. I continued research. Okay. Yep. Let me try doing a little bit of a riff on it, but not much. Let's see here. Oh goodness. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so this is not like the craziest panel, but I think it'll work. I want it to be almost in proportion with that. Okay. It's actually stuff like this that makes me really believe in the process of doing roughs and thumbnails and kind of working out in different methods until you go to final. Because like a page like this is going to need a lot of like kind of working it out like on a design level before kind of going into the final. Um, and so as corny as that is, I think it's like um, super helpful to like start loose and kind of where things aren't all set in stone, and then kind of go from there. Okay. Hopefully this makes sense in a second. That's like my catchphrase for this show now is this will make sense in a second. Because I'm working on thumbnails. What's going to be fun is when I'm doing live streams and working on panel borders and type, because I think that will go really fast. And also be mostly using Illustrator, which is what I use to like comp that stuff out before I get to like the final stuff. But I think that phase will be a lot of interesting stuff. Although also a lot of gaps of quiet while I'm like typing something and really spell checking, because on this I'm not spell checking. I'm just comping out and kind of figuring out what I want the layout to look like. the lighting to look like, all of that. So, but I think that'll be an interesting, personally, I think that'll be some pretty interesting streams. When things are a little more worked out, it's a little easier to get to the final. Do you do roughs a lot, Mama Soto, when you're working on graphic designs and illustrations? And if so, do you find them helpful? I'm curious. Okay. There are different methods. Like there's some art where you just kind of go in and you just do it and it works out, you know. Frank was saying he has a printer scanner, but hasn't figured out how to scan onto the computer. It scans like a copy machine. Is it connected to your computer? And then are you working from like a PC or a Mac? Because if you're working from a Mac, generally, as long as you have the driver, you can just actually scan directly through Photoshop. Like you can go file, import from device, and then it'll go to it. And then also you can use image capture, which is built into like almost every Mac. You can use that too. And then Mama Soto was talking about some scan apps that work as well. Rough. I do roughs. I have downsized the quality of them for a client, but not for sell. I do a bunch still. Yep. Quantity of them, not quality. Yeah, for like a client, I'll usually do a bunch of really loose thumbnails, like way looser than what I'm doing now, because it's just like a quick map for myself. And then with a client, I'll do like a ton of those for myself, and then I'll isolate it to like 2 or 3 to present, and then do a tighter rough to kind of send them. So it limits their options, because a client given every option in the world is like equivalent to like a client at a restaurant with a menu that's too huge. It's like it sometimes can be a problem, you know. But giving them limited options, it helps them like hone it down and also present them with options you're happy with. So regardless of which one they pick, you'll feel confident about the final. I continued. Okay. More. Yeah. Mama Soto was saying like a kid in a candy store. Yeah, totally. And I think for creatives, like this is something a lot of non-creatives don't realize, but for creatives, I think the restrictions, like having limitations, actually helps. So even if somebody's starting a comic, I always recommend they come up with like some basic frameworks and restrictions for their work process, just so that they can proceed forward without getting lost in the chaos of like too many options, and then being unable to kind of make art, you know. More methods. It's going to be a similar thing where it's going to be like a hand. So I'm doing these like infographic style things for this sequence. That, like, once again, we're just kind of trying to pull people back to like the first book a little bit, like, so they kind of have a feeling of like these threads all starting to tie together. It's also kind of important because it's going to start getting into like sort of the conclusion and why this changed, like this kind of mentality and mindset. And so it's important to kind of bring people back to the beginning where it was talking about that. Okay. Okay, here we go. Then Frank, I hope that helped with the scanning stuff, but it's always hard because it's hard to know what everybody's setup is. And if it's a PC, I always feel like I have no way of knowing because I always get really confused on PCs. Let's see. Yeah, should work. More methods. Next one. So how are you doing, Frank? I feel like I already asked you earlier in this what you were working on. Let me see. I think you shared. Oh, I didn't see. Okay, so what are you up to, Frank? Maybe if you already answered that, I apologize for not noticing. But I'm kind of curious. I also am stoked to have our little night gang here. It's pretty awesome. Night gang in the house, working on art at like odd hours of the day. What time is it in Texas right now? Is it like bright and early in the morning, or I'm trying to remember the time change there because I know we're being joined by a lot of folks from Texas. All right, so this is Adam has joined us. How's it going, Adam? Welcome to the night gang, where we are staying up at like 1 in the morning. It's got to be kind of an odd time for you too, Adam. How are you doing, man? Adam's in my time zone up in Washington. Um, Late night artist here. Doing good. Clocked in progress for the 100 days, but was chilling. But I was working on Captain Goggles. Ah, got it. Okay, I saw that sketch. It was kind of coming along there. Let's see here. So, Adam, you still working on some drawing practice and stuff? Let's see. So this is a part of the book where I am like basically referencing previous stuff. Yeah. Doing all right. I am typically up late. Me too. It's kind of a weird thing, but I feel most creative like that. So this is going to be referencing the first book with this section, and then I kind of want to wonder if it should be a little taller. It might be cool to have it go a little taller, but that's going to make a little awkward space at the bottom. So let's see. Let's find out. I do kind of want to have it stacked like that. I like that though. It is 3:23 a.m. here, says Frank. And then Adam was saying I use pencils, brushes, pens, etc. to draw and working on some studies. Yeah, I'm like, I tend to do everything non-digitally, like on my comics, but right now I am kind of enjoying this thing, like this working digitally thing for the sake of expediency on these thumbnails. It helps with layouts where I can like resize stuff and stuff. And then Frank was saying, you're not a real artist until you pay $1,000 for a drawing tablet. Yeah. And it is nice to have one for digital touch-ups. When I used to teach at LCAD, though, I would encourage students to get a Wacom tablet. It didn't have to be Wacom brand, but like having a tablet. And it took them about a week to get used to it. But once people start really using a tablet, like my wife, for the longest time was doing traditional watercolors for clients, and then she finally kind of transitioned to getting comfortable with using the tablet, and it's helped her out a lot on like freelance work and stuff. So I encourage it, but like I said, you don't have to. I think you can get one of these for like $100, which sucks, but like I mean that's still expensive, but it's like a lot less than the tablets. But I do like it. It's a little different when you have a little responsiveness with your hands. But I also like, I think working traditionally is commendable and something I do a lot. So I love it. Like to see more of it. It's going to be fun to get to the traditional parts of this once I have all my little stuff all comped out. Okay. Continued reaching. Let's see. Yeah, this is definitely going to need to pull a lot because this is definitely like a mirror of the first one. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Let me look at something real quick. I wonder. So I'm curious what you're sketching. What studies you're working on, Adam? I think studying drawing is a lovely thing to do. Okay, let's see here. Ah, wait a second. I've got it. I was trying to think of a way to kind of reference the older pages, and I think I had it kind of come to me. There it is. Okay. Try like a long and thin panel. This is a very strange deviation, but I think it'll work. Okay. Oh. Adam is studying anatomy, female faces, and poses. All good things to do. Oh, that's cool. So Frank's gotten pen tablets for like $40, so that's good to know. I've done a lot of coloring on computer, and then painting the colored parts as much as possible. That would be cool. I think if you do color on the computer again, like doing a mouse click, it doesn't work as quick as like a Wacom once you get used to it. But I think it's to each their own. Like I've known some pretty brilliant colorists that can do it without. So I think it's just a personal call of like what you want to use. But if you're doing like traditional coloring on stuff and just painting them, I think that's cool too. I like that. All right. So let's see here. Perhaps the bridge. Okay. Oh my goodness. How's the weather in oh my gosh, that's the worst question. How's the weather? But I am curious actually how the weather is doing up in Washington. So this is where I'm gonna pull like the previous thing. Okay, so this is gonna be that little infographic from before. I want this to be like a little infographic type view. And let's increase that a little bit. Nice. Adam was saying he's sketching a sort of androgynous female right now, and then the weather is all right. It's warming up and rainy. Huh. I did like the rain, although it gets old, like the rain in the Northwest, but I do miss it sometimes. And I'm definitely excited about it getting towards uh, like that kind of, I don't know, there's something about like May and April where I just feel more myself. Um, and then like once it gets into like I love most seasons, but there's something about this kind of in between phase that I'm not like always at my best creatively. So I rain definitely brings out like a weird creative side to me. Let's see here. I'm trying to think how big to make this little infographic. Okay, I think that'll work. It's going to be something like this. Okay, that works. At some point this year, I plan to do some digital-based stuff with some pixel art for a fake fighting game idea. I love that. Pixel art is fun, man. It'd be fun to do. It would just be fun to do like a pixel art comic, honestly, because it's just so like it's kind of a different challenge, but it's also fun because you're working like minimally. So a lot of I don't know, sounds fun. Is all I'm saying. I think that would be cool. All right, we're getting closer. Pulling that previous kind of reference again, just to like tie everything together. Tying the threads here. And then similarly, this is going to be arcs. Okay, let's get that. Let me see that again. Okay, I have that be a little lighter. We'll pull back some of that. Why am I doing? Okay, I'm not doing a final art here. I was about to like start doing some cross hatching and stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, this is just a rough. Like I just need to block out what that rendering is going to look like, but I don't need to like cross hatch everything that I'm going to hatch anyway later. So, okay. Okay, so there we go. And then this is going to say, okay. We're going to erase this. Oh, merge down. And got to resize this panel a little bit so that it can work. And actually that works because this type is like way too large. All right, we're getting closer. I have that actually sounds really cool though. I love the idea of fighting game idea based on a bunch of public domain characters, my own take on them, like a Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat type style. That would be amazing. With I love that. I love the idea of public domain characters fighting. That sounds amazing. That actually sounds really cool. Okay. kind of wondering. Okay. Weirdly enough, I think these might end up needing to be a little wider. Oh, no. Okay, hang on. Okay, this whole sequence might need to be just a wee bit wider, or maybe not. Okay, I got to think about this for a second. So, give me 2 seconds because I got to think about what I'm going to do for this. I think it needs to be a transition that goes to a sequence in the room, but how's that going to work? I'm trying to kind of think it out loud. I love the idea of the fighting game. That's a really cool idea, though. Okay, give me 2 seconds. I will be right back. I also need to refill my coffee because I noticed like my brain is waning a little bit. So I'll be right back, you guys. Let's see here. Next. Okay. Yeah. All right, here we go. And this is going to be, I got it. Similar, referencing another page. It's going to be one of these. It's going to be sort of referencing the first, possibly. I don't know. I just brought that in just in case. Okay. So, needless to say, like I'm addressing some pretty heavy topics here that deal with mental illness, and my first book does as well. And so I definitely encourage people who like might have similar struggles to what I have and had at the time to like seek help if they need it. There's like a suicide awareness hotline and all that fun stuff. But I definitely would recommend that if you guys are having ever at a point where you're like feeling that kind of thing. The only reason I mentioned that is just because a lot of what I'm going to be sketching on the next few pages deals with that kind of stuff, as does like my first book. So yeah, but I always want to throw that out there just in case, because like I have, since this comic was made, like gone on to like get married, like have a kid, and like things don't always kind of stay where I was at. And actually, this comic is like even heading in a direction that's going to kind of explain a little bit of how I got out of some of that. Although I still, to this day, struggle with that kind of stuff. Yeah, sorry for the warning. Sorry for the warning too. I know it's not like the most fun topic in the world, but that's kind of what I'm working on thumbnailing too. So okay, so this is going to be I mean, I think most people who've read my first book know that that's going to be like a topic addressed in the second book as well. But you never can be too careful, I am excited about the IRS thing tomorrow. We're going to be reviewing Little Nemo in Slumberland, which I'm pretty stoked about because Winsor McCay is one of my favorite artists, and it's like we're going to be grappling with sort of some of that kind of stuff too. That's going to require a little bit of weird, uncomfortable dialogue. But like my favorite thing in the world is uncomfortable dialogue. Like I actually really enjoy talking about the things you're not supposed to talk about at parties, which has always made me an odd fellow at parties. Because small talk is fun and I enjoy small talk, but one of the things I love about autobiocomics, like reading them and writing them, is like kind of being able to delve into the topics that no one talks about. And I think it's important to talk about that kind of stuff. Yeah, because I think when things are treated as like taboo, it can just make them worse. But I don't know. Let's see here. So let's see. Okay. So now it's basically like my character's like researching again, kind of online, even though things are looking up in his life. And then at the same time, like also going to be doing research towards his book. Like he has this weird book idea I did when I was younger, have this book idea to do like a web comic that was going to be about like atheism, because I was like heavily atheistic, and so I was doing research for it at the time. So that's where what I'm talking about here. Research for my atheist webcomic. Okay, so here we go. This is an interesting question. Hang on a sec. Let me check this out. You mentioned autism in a previous live stream. Can't remember if you said you are on the spectrum or just identify with a lot of the traits. So I've never been officially diagnosed, but my son is definitely on the spectrum and has been diagnosed, and we had to get him a speech therapist. And through that process with my son, because my era of growing up, like they didn't even have a thing called autism. Like they didn't really know what it was. They didn't know anything about it. But when I was a kid, I did have some learning issues, and they weren't related to my academic performance. Like I did fine academically, but I always had issues with, like, I could never be comfortable with lies, even though they like even hyperbolic lies where it's not like a harmful lie. It's just like a, oh, that guy's like an inch away or something. And I'd be like, no, it's 2 inches, like that, like, whatever it is, like, the point being, like, even if it was like a mild exaggeration, somebody was saying, I'd just be like, no, that's not factual, you know. And then also picking up social cues, trouble, like when I'm interested. This is when I was a kid. But like when I was interested in a topic, it was really hard for me to not talk about. And then similarly, it was hard for me to engage in conversations that I didn't just redirect to topics that I was really personally interested in. So, uh, so I had a lot of behaviors that, like, I just thought I was just kind of a weird kid. And, um, but like seeing my son go through it and then reading more about autism, he's high functioning, which is awesome. We lucked out. And I think we got him the speech therapy early enough to where, I mean, he's like the smartest kid in his class, but which is really cool to me. Um, but yeah, seeing all of that and reading about it has made me realize more and more that I think I definitely am on the spectrum. So I've never been diagnosed. I don't really necessarily know if I need to be diagnosed with it, because it's like I function like fine in society. But it's definitely interesting because it's one of those things where I definitely think it's probably the case, because I definitely see a lot of commonalities with things my kid struggles with, like even hand flapping and stuff like that. Like I did a lot of that stuff. So, and still do, like if I get uncomfortable. So I don't know. I definitely think I'm on the spectrum. So that's an interesting question though. Adam, are you kind of on the spectrum as well? I don't know. But yeah, it's been really fascinating, and I don't find it like disturbing to realize that about myself. I actually like it. It kind of makes certain things that were sort of unusual about my behavior make a little sense. Like as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, okay, I was just like, you know, probably dealing with that. Yeah. Oh, never really knew much about it till more recently, but I found out a few months ago that I have high functioning autism. That makes sense. Yeah, it's weird. It's like I think from earlier generations, it's like definitely not something we find out until like well into adulthood, you know. So, um, but I think it's advantageous when it comes to making comics. I mean, it explains why I'm like obsessed and very like ritualistic in the way that I do comics. Like I show up, I am able to dedicate years of time like repetitively working towards an end goal. And so like it's weird, but a lot of the kind of focus issues and stuff, with the high functioning version on the spectrum, I think I have, like, it's actually been a benefit with art. And it kind of makes a lot of sense why I do art, why I'm really good at like back planning. So a lot of, weirdly enough, like some of the qualities of it, I think, have given me an advantage in the field. So that's been helpful. So yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. The more I read about it too, and like once again, I've actually found out this is really common. Most parents from our generation don't even know until their kid is diagnosed, and then they're like, "Oh, that's because you just start seeing." And you read more about it, and then you start seeing um, more commonalities, you know. Um, And then Adam was saying, I started to notice it is really common for cartoonists. Yeah, I think it is. Um, and I definitely think it explains a lot, for me, it's explained a lot about myself. I think for me, it was like one thing because I was reading about it when we were finding out about my son having it, and I was like kind of looking into it. You have to read up on it and stuff, and I was like, showed my wife like a list of symptoms for high functioning, and I was like, this is just like, this isn't really a weird thing, this is just how people are. And she kind of looked at me like, no it isn't. Like, you know. And I was like, oh okay. I had thought like all the symptoms were just sort of like what it was like for everyone, you know. But yeah, no, it's not. But it's been enlightening, and like I said, I don't personally think it's held me back in life, although it's definitely led to social struggles and stuff like that I think, but I also think, like with my son and stuff, I think like we want to give him the tools to succeed in life and stuff like that, but I also don't think of it as like a negative. Like I don't think of him as having some flaw. Like I actually think it's a strength for him actually. He just needs like some extra tools, like, you know, speech coaching, and then just more literal communication. And then like he's a pretty like brilliant, intelligent, amazing kid who can like do math at levels way higher than his grade level. And there's just a lot of stuff that's been really helpful. And then Adam was saying, that's awesome you found out through your son. And then what's surprising is to learn that most people are not this way. Yeah. That's really interesting. But then I also like, I do, this was the wrong spelling. I do think, most people have something though. Like I tend to think, I think like most people have some kind of struggle, like, and they have some kind of issue, um, and I think it just kind of like, I don't know, it's weird, but like the more people I meet, I haven't really met a lot of like normal people, and not just in art, just in life. Like I've met people who kind of pretend to be normal, but but it's like I haven't met a ton of balanced normal people. And I think that's actually one of the, it's actually slightly encouraging that like we're all a lot of strange folks, you know. um Mama Soto was like, what, we're not normal? And then Mama Soto was also saying, we think our last child is high functioning. He had speech issues, saw a therapist, etc. Not very social. Yeah, and my son's like hilariously very social. He's just like not um like he really like we'll go to like a store, and I used to do this as a kid too. But we'll go to a store and he'll just start telling the cashier like everything. Like he's made up a game or something, and he just starts going off about the game and how cool it is. And like the issue he struggles with is like he doesn't pick up the social cues of like if the cashier is kind of like giving him a look like, yeah, I gotta kind of you know, like he doesn't pick up social cues as easily as most people. Like even, you know, his, like my niece who's the same age as him, like she'll pick up like subtle social cues even at 7. Like it's like they pick up, he picks up the cue, they pick up the cues, and like he's just, it's like a little blind to that. um and I relate to it because I am too, and I've had to learn, like for me it's hard to read social cues, and so I've had to learn social cues like the hard way, you know. um but yeah, that's kind of the thing. But yeah, I don't know if I can say I've been like officially diagnosed with it because it's like it's not something I've really felt a need to get a diagnosis about, you know? One thing I was surprised, most people don't have intense interests, and in most social settings, they don't want special interests to be discussed in depth. Yes, that's true. Um, and for me, like that's a hard one too. Um, yeah, there we go. Probably would have been diagnosed as a kid back in the day, just wired that way. Brain never turning off, but always have found ways to help myself. Yeah, same here. I I think it's cool. I did a interview for this show called Beautiful Voyager, which is really cool. And uh, it's a really cool community, like the Beautiful Voyager community, um, that is like basically about overthinkers because a lot of like mental issues, like mental health struggles and stuff, come from people who are overthinkers. Like, and oddly enough, like especially like overthinkers tend to end up in like executive positions and like pretty, you know, like being fairly successful, like in like in a lot of workforces because they overthink, so they can back plan and like see things coming before they happen. And like, you know, there's a lot of like analytical skills that require a lot of overthinking, but also because of overthinking, it can cause like huge problems, you know. So it's like this balance where it's like it's good that we overthink, but it's also like finding ways to deal with being an overthinker, and sort of ways to balance. And anyhow, it was a really good conversation. But Meredith Arthur is the lady who runs the Beautiful Voyager thing, and she's really good. She's got a book about overthinking too. That's cool. That's on Amazon. It's like a little visual kind of artsy book, but it's really cool. And I think she's on to something with that. Like, I think it's a lot of it's just being an overthinker. But overthinkers are also really powerful people. So I think it's like a balance, you know. It definitely is helpful when it comes to like structuring a book or a graphic design, like to have like a structural, analytical brain. You know, I think it makes sense that we'd all be drawn to the arts, you know. But you're right, the intense interests, Adam. That's yeah, not everybody. um, and I'll have that. Like it's like I'm really fascinated by certain topics, and if somebody mentions it, I'm just like, oh, let me tell you a million things about it. And I won't sometimes pick up like the cue where they're like, yeah, I'm not like we're changing the topic now, you know. Like, um, but great question. It's fun to talk about. Okay, so this is going to be from, but I also don't think that should be something anyone is ashamed of. And I think that like it also shouldn't be something we necessarily have to hide because it's like, you know, if that's how we're built, like I think we're on this earth for a reason. So um, I think every human being has value. And I feel like um, the lie of a lot of modern society is the idea of like pretending some people don't have value just because they're different or their brains are wired differently, and also pretending there's a normal, you know. So yeah. All right, so here we go. Trying to think of a good shot here. I think it's going to be, here we go. My red flag one day at a family party was a relative telling me, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," because I was loud for them too much. Yeah, I've had a lot of moments like that. I like it's almost like I'm slightly clueless sometimes, and um, especially for me, I also like really like debate and argument, and that's not necessarily always good. There's just certain things, but partially because of what Adam was talking about with like it's really hard for me to hear something that does not seem factual being stated. Um, and it's not that I'm always like speaking truth because I too am like a person, so it's not like I haven't like believed the wrong thing or had like the wrong idea, but it's like when somebody intentionally or it seems like intentionally is like misrepresenting something, it's very hard to it's hard not to get heated and like want to get into it, um but I kind of think that's awesome. Like I actually think it's a neat thing that a lot of people don't realize about autism is like one of the big signs, like at least with when dealing with our son was like that fact that like um they like truth. um and I think that's so cool because like I don't know, I feel like valuing truth is not necessarily a flaw, like it's a pretty cool thing. Okay. Totally, like saying it's 6:30 when it's really 6:28. And actually it's funny because I am less rigid with that sort of thing now, where I round up because it's what people do. Um, but if I do that with my son, where I'm like, "Hey, it's bedtime. It's like 8:30," he'll look at the clock and be like, "No, it's 8:29." Like, like, and he's not trying to argue. He's just like, "No, I have to clarify that it's not that time." He's not doing it like maliciously. Sometimes he is like arguing because he's a kid, and all kids like want to stay up late and stuff. But most of the time, when he kind of speaks to like correct, he's not doing it in like a malicious way. He's just doing it because like he knows like no, 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 I looked at the clock and it's like actually this time. um and I think that's kind of awesome, actually. I think it's kind of cool. um and it's I think if somebody weren't aware that's an autistic kid, they might just be like, you smart ass, like they might have a response like that, as opposed to like understanding like he's not like trying to um like argue when he does stuff like that. He's just literally trying to say like, hey, this is actually, it's like, yeah, that was actually wrong. Like this is what it is, and that's all. Just saying, Um, I think it's neat to be able to kind of understand it and relate to it. And the older he gets, the more I really, I'm like, yeah, I had that. So it makes me empathetic to like to him and stuff. But yeah, I think that explanation of like being at a party um, is pretty. I empathize with that, Mama Soto. um, it's kind of neat that you found that out about yourself, though, Adam. Like that's really cool. Um, that's a it's an important thing to know, I think. I feel like this too with like because I know I struggle with depression, and it's like for me, it's been freeing to know that like that's an issue I have. Um, because like once you kind of, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, but it's like once you've kind of named um what your challenge is, it's like easier to be able to look into and battle. Because like if you know your enemy, you can come up with a better battle plan, whereas like if you're just kind of being pulled by like the whims of whatever emotion you're feeling at the moment, like it can be really hard. So I find it similar um, with like mental health stuff. I find it similar with like autism and things like that, where it's like now I have something I can read that actually helps me to understand some of the things that alienate me from other people, you know? Yeah, right. Yeah, that's kind of what I've experienced too, because I've been like when I with my son, it's like when I found out he had it, I watched a ton of YouTube videos and people saying, "Hey, this is what my experience is like." And quite often, most of the ones I watched, I was just like, "Well, that's not strange. Like that's how I feel." like, you know. And yeah, so I think most people would tick um like one or two of the boxes on those like, diagnosis charts, right? Where I think there's common things in there, but like, my wife pointed this out to me too, where it's like not everyone looks at the diagnosis and is just like, yep, 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 on like every single thing on the chart. And that to me is that's what I've found personally. Like I've definitely experienced that. So that's cool. That I actually think that's kind of cool you found that out though, because it's going to be helpful, I think, in helping you navigate um, what you have to navigate. Let's see here. I do sometimes feel really bad for my wife having to navigate um, two autistic people. like, because it's got to be frustrating. Like for me, it's not as hard to navigate because it's just sort of. But then again, like she is really brilliant at navigating, and like honestly, like she did the most work I think of the two of us. She put in like a crap load of work in like getting him speech therapy and like keeping like there's all this documentation you have to keep, and like making sure we got funding for it, and um, like we're in the right schools, and um, just like she's been a superhero with it when it comes to that. But I also just feel bad for her sometimes because like she's in a house full of people who are like, actually it's 2:30, like um if they're like it's 2:25, she's dealing with like two of that, and that can be, I'm sure, really infuriating. um but she's a pro and amazing. um and also my wife's an artist, so I think that helps. Like I think artists are also just wired a little different, and maybe we're all on this spectrum. Maybe that's what got us into art. I don't know, because I do think there's got to be something strange about a person when they decide, like at that point where drawing gets really hard. Most people kind of give up, and then there's this certain personality that's going to be like, nope, I'm going to power through and redraw eyeballs for like 5 weeks till I can draw eyeballs, and then I'm going to draw people, and I'm going to suck at it, and I'm going to keep going because I'm obsessed with it. There's got to be I don't know, like a specific trait to it. Huh. I think of it as a very positive thing, but other people don't always treat it that way. Got some cruel reactions at first. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm not sure if I'd want to personally test for it, because like I function okay, and I worry about not so much like my family or anything like that, but I worry how I would professionally be treated, um, because there is like stigma in the world about things like that. And um, I don't know. I think it's good to find out, and I think it's good to know, but I think it sucks that like people are so stigmatized about things like that. And similarly, like I mean, they are that way with discussions of mental illness and um, discussions of a lot of hard issues, and it's kind of unfortunate that people can't just like to an extent like just sort of hear someone out and like sort of understand. Um, I also think like with the spectrum kind of conversations too, I think it also just reminds people of how vulnerable they themselves are when they have to like admit that like there's stuff that's outside of their control, because I think we're in a society that really likes to think that we are in full control over every single thing we do. And I mean, and that's valuable, you know. It's like that kind of pseudo belief in that like helps me make comics and helps me uh, do things like exercise, you know, where it takes a lot of willpower. But if I believe that through like sheer grit and willpower I can overcome, and like um, even with this comic, like you know, it's overwhelming for me to think about hundreds of pages and executing those. But if I can like through sheer grit like overcome and do it, like even if I'm not as quick or as good as somebody else, you know, like that's a great thing to believe in. But I also think there's a downside of it where I think people don't like to accept there are certain things that are outside of their control. And um I think that's a shame. And I think like sometimes conversations about issues like that can remind people of that, like that like life is not always this like thing where everything's equal and everything's in someone's personal control. And so anyhow, that's my thoughts on it. I don't know. Anyhow, needless to say, I'm sorry you got cruel reactions from that. I personally will say I'm glad you found out that about yourself. I mean, um, because I think that's a good thing, and it's going to help you. It's going to help you navigate. The way I look at it for my kid is, I am going to raise him like he is, you know, the most valuable person in my life, which he is, and I'm going to have that discussion with him if it ever limits him. But I also don't want that to limit him. So you know, I want him to be aware so he can work on it and grow to be like the coolest, like strongest, best person he can be with the limitations he has. And also, um, you know, I don't want him to ever think of that as like something that is gonna um, hold him back from anything, uh, because he is valuable and brilliant and cool, and like he deals with a different struggle than other people. But you know, yeah. So that's my point, and I'm trying to view it that way for myself too, where it's like it's been a hurdle to kind of deal with, but I think you know, I also don't want it to limit me or define my limits. I have a buddy. One of my first roommates was born without a hand. Like he had like a fetus hand, like instead of his hand, like it never fully developed. And so And I don't know how, but like he learned how to play guitar. He had like a strap that connected to like a pick, and could play guitar better than I could with like without hands, without a finger, just like with a strap attached to a pick. I was like right here because he didn't have this section. And like he learned how to do magic tricks, and he played basketball better than I played it. And it's like I always think of that guy. Like that guy's one of my favorite guys. Really good friend. But I just always feel like that's how I want to be about everything in life, where it's like you just kind of you learn stuff, you know. Yeah, with the marketing and interacting with other people thing is a terrible disadvantage, but like the persistence and like obsession is not a bad, it's it's a great advantage in our field. So I agree, Adam. Yeah. And like I said, it's really good to know because then you know what you're dealing with. And then if you have like a day where, like I do quite frequently, where you're like ranting about something and realize that you've been going for a while and people might have been making clues to be like, then it's like, then you know, and you can like learn from it and be a little more aware of it. Like that's how it's helped me. But there's certain things about my personality that like are so ingrained. Like I interrupt people when I'm excited. That's a very common um, uh, autistic thing too. And like that's just so ingrained in my personality. It's really hard to try to fight it. Um, but it's like being aware of those traits and things like it can help you. You know, I think navigate the broader world of normies, if there are such normies. Okay, but thanks for sharing that, Adam. That's really cool. And a good conversation. We are over 2 hours. I'm going to take a 20-second break and then I'm going to finish up this page because we're 2/3 of the way through the page. Thank you, Mama Soto and Adam, for hanging with me this whole time. And I will see you guys in a bit if you're still here in about 20 seconds. Get a coffee refill and all that fun stuff. So, yeah. All right. So Adam was saying I have a lot of sensory activities that made sense of too. Huh. Explain, because I think I have those too. I definitely am jittery. I tend to like have to be moving a little bit. I have a thing where I like doing this to my eyebrows. I don't know. I've done that since I was a kid. And I like in conversations, I have a tendency to like lose focus on somebody's eyes and look towards like something shiny. And so it's like, um, yeah, like once again, I thought these were just quirks. Like I remember on my first date with my wife, I was kind of like looking at like a window because it was shiny, and I was listening to her and hearing her out, but she was like, "What are you looking at?" And I remember explaining, "Oh, this is just something I do." You know, I had no idea that was like a thing. You know, um, and so like I'm glad you kind of mentioned it, finding it encouraging, finding that out about yourself, Adam, because um, for me it's a little encouraging because it's like even though I'm not normal, I'm like I am normal for dealing with that thing. Like there's a community of people who have that same quirk, and that's it's different. It's a spectrum, but it's like there's commonalities, and I find that really encouraging to know that. Um, it's kind of like talking about depression in a comic, like I'm doing now. It's like there's an encouraging communal thing of realizing that you're not alone. Like because I think one of the most isolating things in any of these things is like feeling like you're this weird, unusual, like wild card that like no one can relate to. And like that to me, I think is like the deep sin of like not talking about like autism or panic disorder or mental illness or anything like that. It's like having a conversation where you're not treated like you have the plague or something. I think that's really important. Um, and for me, it's like it's helped me have a window into like yeah, being normal for that neurotype. Perfectly put. um, and it's kind of neat because it's like helped me find this community of brilliant, awesome people who, uh, you know, yeah. So yeah, and it also makes me better at certain things and worse at certain things. I think that's great. So I get that. Adam, the sensory stuff. Mama Soto was saying. And then he said, it's like finding out you're female in a world where everyone else is male. Yes, it's exactly like that. Um, I use my hands and arms a lot, very expressive. Me too. I tell them I'm just passionate, love learning, sharing, and connecting. Yes. So we're all in a tribe here, I think. Like literally, we are like the night gang here of like artsy, passionate people. And I think that's great. That's the other thing is like they're artsy, passionate people. So nothing wrong with that. Let me see. All right. So here we go. But I'm very glad that like how like I wouldn't have even known that about my storytellers is what we are. That's right. That's right. Um I think okay, let me get into this thing. But I was really glad to find that out about my son. I actually found out when I first found out I was kind of mad because you never want to hear um, something about your kid that might prevent them from having like a normal life because everybody wants their kid to you know like prosper and do well in life and stuff like that. And I didn't know much about autism at the time, so I remember it was my brother-in-law who works in special education uh, kind of took me aside one day and was like, hey, your son doesn't really make eye contact, and he's nonverbal, and I think he might be like autistic. And this was like really early on. Um, and I was like so mad because it felt like somebody saying like, your kid isn't normal, and I remember it took me about a week of thinking about it, and it bugged me, and I was kind of angry. And then I did research on it and read it and kind of confronted it and realized, yeah, I think that's true, and processed it. And then after we got like a speech therapist and stuff for it, I found out from that lady that actually fathers in particular tend to have trouble accepting that, and that most fathers she dealt with would just deny it and be totally uninvolved in the process of like speech therapy and like sort of dealing with like there's certain things you have to do with an autistic kid where you have to prime them before anything. So it's like in 10 minutes we're going to do this. Like you don't want to do sudden shifts in activity. So, but they're not hard to do, and but a lot of fathers apparently like wouldn't even take that step and be really involved in it. And so because I felt really bad that it took me like a week to be okay with it. And it turns out that actually that's a pretty short range of time for a parent. And apparently male parents have more issues like sort of accepting that kind of thing. I think it's probably because also culturally, like, you know, men are usually encouraged to like not show weakness and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of what happened there. I don't know what's going on with my screen is kind of weird. Is the stream coming in okay for you guys? I worry. I hope it's coming in. Okay. Let me get into this panel. Okay. Speaking of weird, debatey, overexcited stuff, that's this next section. I had been, but I agree. I do think I think more people from our generation, especially artists and musicians, and um, like if you think of okay, cool, it's coming in. Okay, Adam said that's good. But I think it's funny because it's like artists and musicians, you know, like they have similar, very repetitive activities that require a lot of dedication and sort of a lot of failure to kind of get. Like you sort of like when you're playing guitar, you have to like play off notes and then like practice and practice and practice. And finally you start learning the notes, and there's like sequences, and it just makes sense. I really do think a lot of artists and musicians are probably on the spectrum from our generation. We just didn't know what it was at the time. But I also used to have like I got in trouble a lot as a kid because I had like erasers like in first grade. I still remember it vividly, where I would make the erasers into like you know the big pink eraser. I would make it into like a van and like draw like all these things on it. And like I would actually be learning and listening, but I would be like driving the van around. Um, and I did fine academically, but like I remember getting in trouble because they were like, "Well, he's doing okay, but like he just like needs to stop playing with like his eraser thing on the desk." And I had that kind of thing where I just get lost in this little world of imagination and like play, and a little obsessed with it, even though I was processing information. So it's just interesting to know that like that was just the spectrum. That's all it was. So I almost feel like it's cool because it's like being let in on a exclusive club of awesome people. Okay. I am kind of curious, Adam, if you don't mind sharing, like, how do you get a test like that as an adult? Like, if I were wanting to, I don't know if I would, but I'm kind of curious how you went about making that happen, because there is the part of me that likes truth that would be really curious to possibly try it out, um, and see. Okay. So this is another phone conversation. These are so hard to depict and not just get boring. Um, nice. That's awesome. So they didn't want to diagnose you and didn't give you a test at first. Why didn't they want to diagnose you? Out of curiosity, was it because of the stigma? Like, where I'm curious. Yeah, I've had one of those questionnaires regarding like mental health and stuff, and definitely had those diagnoses, where you're like tick, 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 and they're like, yeah, you're very depressed, like, but I've never had that for autism, and I'm kind of curious, like the written questionnaire. Um, it's not, I don't know, it's not a bad idea. Oh, got it. Okay. So they were just trying to kind of avoid the extra work, you know. He was saying there's something about diagnosing adults and the way that it's set up that they're not qualified to do or require special training or something. Still, like, you're a doctor, like, maybe, you know, I'm glad you pushed for it, Adam. That's cool. All right, so here we go. How am I going to depict this phone call where it's not boring? Okay. I think like a really big close up headshot, because the last ones I've been doing. This is actually good. Okay. I think that is one of the reasons I'm really into two phones talking to each other. I love that. Um, yeah, that would be really funny to just have it be like cell phones talking to each other. it's hard to do phone sequences, but they're so essential when it comes to like an autobiographical comic where the conversation that was over the phone was really important. Bring back the old school V. Yeah, but there's definitely something about the kind of mathematical process of working out a comic too, and sort of this abstract pattern making that is in it, that I think appeals to me as well for a similar reason. Um, but I'd be interested. I think that's a pretty good thing to do, um, to kind of find out like what makes you tick and that kind of stuff. I think is really smart. Let's see here. I'm going to old school with the handset ones, but they use those still in icons. Yeah, like I like it's funny, I had a stream a while ago where I was talking about wanting to show like there's these really cool panel borders that used to be made when people were having phone conversations that were made from like the swirling phone cord, you know, like the twirly phone cord. And they just make the panel out of the phone cord that was connected to the phones, which would be really cool, except I kind of can't do that now. Um, I'm also using way too modern of a phone by default here, and these are supposed to be like flip phones. So I'm going to have to change that phone to be a flippy phone. But anyhow, so the point is I was kind of lamenting during that last phone sequence that I couldn't use the phone cord as panel, because that was always such a really cool trope in like in how to depict a phone conversation. So anyhow, regardless, yeah. Tove Jansson does that kind of thing in the Moomin comic. Yeah, dude, Moomin is so beautiful. That comic, the way it's executed, the kind of like French line, the simplicity of the characters, like using elements of the story as a panel border. Yeah, I think that's great. It's going to be interesting. I'm curious where I'm going to go comic wise, when this thing's done, because I do think I want to explore. I might have to explore some all ages stuff because it is fun. Anyhow, and then that exploration of style I might have to do tomorrow morning. I was gonna do that tonight when I finished my thumbs, but as usual, these take me a lot longer than I expect every time. So there's a comic pitch that I'm working on that is going to be that I was going to take some time to play around and like kind of improve. And so I wanted to work on that tonight after I finished this, but I'm finding that I probably don't need to tonight because I'm not going to have the juice probably at like 4 a.m. or whatever. it is looking like I might be wrapped with this page at like 5. Yeah, elements of story as a panel border though are great. How are your drawings coming along, Adam? And then Mama Soto, how's your business card coming? I do think it's just to bring like a little bit more on the autism thing. I do think it's cool we live in a society that has figured out a little bit more of what it is. Because I can just imagine, because I do remember as a kid feeling really alienated from other kids, and I'm like, anything that helps, like a kid who's like trying to navigate the world and figure things out, like feel less alienated and weird. I think that sounds good. Teresa DePiller. I read the first chapter of your comic, Graduation Nightmares, and it's really fun. And the dialogue's really quippy and interesting. So I can't wait to kind of get further into it. But thanks, Teresa, for turning me on to that webcomic that you did and are working on, because it's really good. I've been enjoying it. And then here is Adam saying, I've just given up on my portrait and switching gears to something else. I got frustrated trying to measure everything. Yeah, measurement is tough when it comes to drawing, folks. But I'm sure you'll push through. Like sometimes it helps to just take a brief break and hit it again when you're fresh. Are you pulling an all-nighter too, though? Like, what time is it for you, Teresa? I'm curious. Yeah, that last one was a rough one, right? It's funny. My friends Chris and Corey stopped by and hung with me that night, but it's like I think both are probably pretty beat today. I feel bad sometimes because I usually work really weird hours anyway. When I was executing the first one of these, it was a pretty complicated thing to get accomplished on top of a day job. So there's a lot of like late night hours where you're kind of up into the early hours. The only difference kind of in this version of the book is I'm just live streaming while I'm doing it. And luckily have the great company of Mama Soto and Adam and Teresa, Night Gang. Nice. It's noon, almost 12 p.m. I'm a huge fan of sleeping. I love sleeping too. I did get a lot of sleep during the day too. Like my wife, like kind of watched Ben like during the morning, and then I kind of took the afternoon shift after I slept in. So because it was a weekend, so it's like I'm not necessarily like it's not quite like the ones that I do during the weekdays where I have to work in the morning. But yeah, I like sleeping too. I just like getting comics done though. Adam was saying I need to push through practicing drawing faces, but I don't really need accurately measured realism in my comics, so it's not really worth spending a ton of time on for now. Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think yeah, it's like it's helpful to learn, but yeah, have fun with your comics, you know. Okay, so let's see. I had been. Okay, I actually have to look this guy up. So this book I'm working on is not for a pitch, and so this is not secret. This one's just the sequel to 2 stories, and the publisher's Marcosia. There's another pitch that's going out that I totally can't talk about. I can say it's like a historical fiction but very heavily on the history, like a story about some that has some seance-y mysticism, and is true and hasn't been told, and it's about a fairly famous figure in like the Victorian era. So that's about it. But yeah, I can't actually talk about it because it is one of those things like nobody's written about yet. So we don't want to like give it away because it's a great topic and it pulls from a lot of actual history. So um that's the question. Possibly, I don't know. It depends on how it works out. That's why I've been cranking on this too. Is like while that's out being pitched, I'm trying to get as much work on the second book. But yeah, that would be really crazy to be navigating working on 2 comics. But it would be a good problem to have. But I do need to try to polish that up. Probably tomorrow, or I should say today, later in the morning. Maybe in about 7 hours from now, maybe around 10. Okay. I need to look up a friend of mine here. All right, there we go. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit of a looser sketch, just kind of trying to get a character. But yeah, it would be fun to work on 2 comics in theory. It might also just be like completely maddening and too much. But the neat thing about like the pitch process is it's always good to have something out there, um, being shopped by like a lit agent while you're working on something. Like to me, I think that's almost like, because I really do think her script is really strong, and so it's like it'd be fun to have that kind of shopping and opening up other possibilities while I have one going. Because the only thing that's going to happen when I'm done with this, like even if it's a couple years from now, is like then I'm on to the next thing. So it'd be cool, like to me in theory, to have the next thing lined up. You know, I don't know if that makes sense. How are you doing, Teresa? Are you pretty much wrapped? Like you were saying, you were trying to get 200 pages done now. I did really enjoy the dialogue in your comic, though. It was really cool. Um, Graduation Nightmares. Teresa, am I pronouncing your last name wrong too? I keep hoping I'm not, because I keep thinking it's Pilar, but is it just Pillar? Let me know. It might be hard to type in a chat or something, but I want to make sure I'm not saying that wrong. But anyhow, Teresa is doing a comic called Graduation Nightmares. You can check out it on Webtoons, and the dialogue is very witty and snappy and fun, and the character designs are pretty cool too. I dig it. It's a good comic, and I will be continuing to read bits of it whenever I have time. This one will be like one of those. Okay. Similarly, like I got to make sure I'm adapting these to be more accurate to the times. There we go. All right. That seems and looks a little bit like Chris, which is good. And then we got different Chris, not Chris Caligula. This is a different Chris. Okay, and then got okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't like getting it wrong, but okay. I'll just say Pilar because that's what I imagine in my head. Okay. Look, dude, look. I hear you is what he's going to be saying. And actually, and it answers my other query. In my head, I was trying to figure out how I'm going to end this panel sequence, but it needs to end on the second part of what he's saying here. I don't like that either. Actually, I do like that. I just want to have it maybe. Okay. I'm going on submission next month for the first time. If my pitch is successful, I will be working on 2 comics too. That's awesome. Cool. Are you submitting with a lit agent? Are you submitting on your own? And how awesome is that? That's very cool. Very cool. And requires bravery. So good for you, Teresa. That's really cool. Okay. Look, I hear you. Nice. With a writer and an agent. That's perfect. That's very cool. I'll send you. I'm excited about that. Did you create sample pages for it, or are you going to be creating the sample pages? Few books. Working with a team makes failure less personal. That's a really good point. I'm mixed about it. I actually like the I like working on my own stuff, and I like working on it with a team. It's different. It's kind of different vibes, but I do like to me, I still ultimately like working on my own stuff the most. Because it's just like, yeah, but you're right. It's also interesting working with a team because it's like I think it's also just cool to have those other voices. So it just kind of becomes its own sort of organic thing that is a combined effort. Oh, awesome. That's great. And then Mama Soto said, very cool work. Where are you located? Teresa's in Spain, correct? Yes, there we go. Knew it. Spain. All right. So perfect. I want to adjust this a little bit. They don't like this either. What am I doing? This is like a monster hand. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. That is still a monster hand. I'm doing like big sausage fingers here. All right. Thumbnails, you guys. Thumbnails. Sausage fingers. Okay. And this is actually going to have a little caption here that sort of creates a little bit of mystery, hopefully. Nope, that's going to be too awkward. I was going to have a little caption here, but I actually realized like that needs to be on its own thing. So we're going to finish this page. This person is a fellow artist as well. Be working more with one of those little side lamps. Maybe like an animator's desk would be more accurate. Kind of IKEA-ish furniture, from what I recall. Maybe one of those like IKEA shelves here with a thing. And let's try like a... Okay, there we go. Teresa was saying, my sister used to live in Chicago. It's crazy cold up there, but it's a cool city. Yes, it is crazy cold. I have a lot of family that grew up in Chicago. Like my dad was like born in Indiana and raised in Chicago. And very cool city, but holy moly. Is my other comic in a style similar to Two Stories or a brand new style? That is what I am debating. The first version of the pitch that I had developed was like a kind of crappier version of what I'm doing for Two Stories, which, keep in mind, like, this right here is not the style of Two Stories that I'm working in right now. It's like a thumbnail and rough pages, and then the final pages are like way more detailed and finished and realistic and stuff. But the I kind of want to rework those pages so I'm a little happier with them, and that is what the big question is. I'm not sure if I want to keep, like, if I do it in the style of Two Stories, I need to do it more legitly in the style of Two Stories to spend more time. And if I do it in or if I'm going to do it in like a looser style, it's going to need to be done. Like, if I do it in a looser style, I need to actually be a little more brave about it and try a different style. So that's actually what I want to do, is like sort of do a little bit of play on that to kind of figure out the answer to that question, whether it's going to be done in the style of Two Stories or in a totally different. What about you, Teresa? Is yours in a different style? And let's see here. I actually want to adjust this a little bit too, so it's going here. There we go. All right, so that is thumbnail roughs done. Thank you, guys, for hanging out with me in the wee hours. Let me pull this up so you guys can see the finished one, but there are the finished thumbnails for and refs for page 107. I hope I answered your question, Teresa, too. Did I answer that okay? I don't know. You tell me. All right. Well, thanks to Adam. Thanks to Teresa. Thanks to Mama Soto. Thanks for the really deep. Thanks to Frank and Ronnie, who came in like earlier. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and making art with me. Like in the really weird hours of the day. So anyhow, and thanks for just the great discussion. Adam, I'm glad we brought up autism too. Like, I think it's a great topic to kind of talk about, and kind of exciting. Cool. So anyhow, with that being said, if you guys haven't yet, pick up Two Stories Book 1, which I think everybody in the chats probably has already. But if you haven't, check it out. Two Stories Book 1. You can get it on Amazon. It's my memoir about faith and mental illness. I'll just show super quickly for anybody who might be here who doesn't own, or maybe watching this after the fact, who doesn't own the book yet. You can actually get Two Stories, and if you look on the right side of the page, it seems like the price has dropped on Two Stories on Amazon, and I don't know why and how long that's going to last, because it's usually about $20. So if you haven't picked it up, it's a good time to pick it up and save a little bit of money. If you have Amazon Prime, then you can get free shipping. If you're ordering from out of state, or you're interested in getting it in a different country that isn't served by Amazon, it's pretty much available at almost every major book retailer online. But you can find links to that from my website as well. And also Marcosia has like a great list of all the different publishers and stuff like that are available. So that being said, thanks to everybody again for hanging out. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit that bell. Pretty sure everybody in the chats has already done that. But if you're new to this cast and you want to watch it live the next time it's going, and hang out with our night gang, like, feel free to subscribe and hit that bell, and it'll notify you when we're about to go live, so you too can join the night gang. Yeah, always a great talk for sure with you guys as well. And I hope you guys have a good morning and a productive day. And I'll probably be seeing you guys later tonight. So, all right, that'll do it. Bye.